Welcome back to the pregame show here on Bob Long Sports, live from Chapman Field at Cumberland Valley High School for the PIAA 6A Football Championship, a radio broadcast, and we're thrilled to be here. Really thrilled to be here with two members of the late 90s LaSalle football team, Mike Durso from the class of 97 and Ed Bongard from the class of 1998. Guys, I know it's a special day for you. 29 years, I'm hearing, to the day, Mike, since your own championship, and what does it mean to be out here tonight?
Yeah, it's funny. We just realized that driving up here tonight, there's a text chain that Ed and I are on with a bunch of alumni, and we realized it was 29 years. I think it's a good sign and a good omen that it's the right time to go win a state title. But yeah, it was a little different 29 years ago at Northeast High School, as we were just saying, in a mud pit than it is out here in Cumberland Valley. But it's a good omen.
It's a good omen, and your teammate, Brett Gordon, and your very good friend Brett Gordon, is coaching this program his second year at the helm, has a chance to be the first father-son duo to win state championships as coaches. Go to you, Ed. You've known Brett for a very long time. What does it mean to have Brett now running the show and everything that he has in front of him?
Yeah, great question, Bob. And I know all of us, his classmates, his friends, those around the, 96 football team, class of 98, couldn't be happier when Brett was named the coach of LaSalle High School. We know the kind of leader Brett is. We know that when he leads young men, and even when he was a leader for us, he has that aura, right, that people want to follow him, right? He knows what he's talking about from a football sense, so, the players right away can pick up on that, right? Players want to be coached and be coached hard by those that have been there before. And Brett's been there, with LaSalle and Villanova, and we couldn't be happier that he's here, achieving this. I think we all knew it would happen, right, with the team that they had. And, we're excited to see what happens tonight.
Well, let's take a step back then with Brett. So one of my favorite stories out there is when Joe Judge and Kevin Stefanski were both head coaches in the NFL, and somebody asked Joe Judge the question in a press conference, hey, you and Stefanski, who was the best quarterback in the Catholic League at that time? And Joe Judge says, well, it was Brett Gordon, actually. And people are thinking, Brett Gordon? Who is Brett Gordon? What was special about Brett at the high school level and being your quarterback at the time?
Yeah, listen, I mean, you can talk about the touchdowns, the completions, the yardage. That stuff is put him in a different class. His talent on the field, to me, it's the stats speak for itself, the titles, the wins. I think what made Brett is that he's just an exceptional leader. He was able to, in his own way, as an underclassman, come in as a sophomore and take control of a team, and he did it in a different way as a sophomore than he probably did as a junior and even as a senior. And initially it was, I'm going to lead by just letting you guys know that you can trust me, and then I'm going to be here and I'm going to deliver. And as his career progressed, he did it in a much more vocal, and this is my team, and I'm going to take control, and I am going to command and demand that you live and play up to a certain standard. And that came from his dad. I mean, Coach Gordon, we were laughing. He used to have a rule that said, you're not allowed to slip. You're not allowed to fumble. You're not allowed to jump off sides. And I think his intensity and his accountability kind of just went right to Brett, and that's how the team kind of followed suit for both of them.
And quite a coaching tree and legacy at LaSalle. You had Drew Gordon, who you just mentioned, who won the state championship as a head coach on a snowy day in 2009. He was the offensive coordinator back in the late 90s with Joe Callistra as the head coach. That's quite a staff now leading into Brett, going from player to dad and now head coach at LaSalle. The LaSalle legacy oozes through those three men's veins, and I'm curious if you can break down a little bit about each of those men and what they brought to the table, Ed.
Yeah, happy to. So, I've said it a couple times this year where, Drew Gordon with Brett revolutionized the Catholic League with the passing offense, right? You look before that, and it was 3 yards in a cloud of dust, right? And a lot of times, Ryan was the best team, and they built it on defense. Along came, Drew Gordon and Joe Callistra kind of gave him the reins to say, go ahead, we know we have, what you can build and what you're capable of as a coach. So Drew did that, obviously with Brett, and they took off, and the records, as Mike said, stand for themselves. Joe Callistra, was a defensive first guy. I spent a lot of time with him being on the defensive side, every week, we had Brendan Coyle, who was a great sack man at 180 pounds, just a great defensive lineman. But every week he would tell Brendan, you're going up against a Division I player, right? It wasn't true. Brendan would school all these guys. But, he had that mindset that, hey, you have to bring it every week, right? We know how good you are, but you have to show it each week. Once again, we talked about it a couple times, and you talked about it with Brett on the programs. Special teams. That was Joe Klister's baby, right? You see so much of that now with Brett. And this team's really excelled this year at special teams and helped them. You look at the Malvar game, right? Without those 2 kickoff returns, the team might not be 12-1 right now, right? So you see, what Brett has taken from each of those mentors, Klister, his dad, and brought it to this team, and it's so special right now. And Brett's just, a culmination of all those things. And they're killing it right now.
Well, we're glad to have you guys here. This is the pregame show for the PIAA 6A State Championship game. LaSalle, Pittsburgh Central Catholic. Our special guests, Ed Bongard from the class of '98, and Mike Durso from the class of 1997. All right, well, it's story time, and I know you guys off air were talking about some of your long tales and fabled eras of LaSalle football. One in particular, you talked about a tough day at Northeast High School with a particularly muddy track. Tell us more about that one, Mike.
Yeah, the game that was 29 years ago today, my senior year, Ed's junior year.
Who was the game? Who'd you play against? For what title, et cetera?
It was the Catholic League title. There were still North and South divisions at that point. We played Father Judge in the championship. We'd beaten them earlier in the season. And the game was at Northeast. And a couple days before the game, it had rained like a monsoon. And there was a bunch of four-wheelers and a bunch of different things, ATVs, that were ridden around on the field. I don't know if it was the night before the game or maybe the morning of the game. So the field was in shambles. It was tracks and mud and inches of mud on the field. So when we come out to these games and see this field and this beautiful turf, we're like, man, we could have done some real damage playing on turf. But it was an incredible game. It was a really interesting game in that Judge, we'd thrown the ball all over everybody all year, and our defense was lights out. But they dropped 8, tried to slow the game down, and basically say, we're not going to let you throw the ball. We still threw the ball a fair amount. Brett had a pretty good game, so did Petrak. But we were able to run the ball a little bit and go back-to-back, win the second one in a row. So.
Yeah, just chime in on that. Mike had probably his best game of the year, and to Brett's credit, right, he kind of stood back, right, didn't have the kind of numbers he had in a normal game because of the defense Judge was playing, and Mike took the reins. I think it was like 20 for 88, or maybe he had over 100 yards. He had a heck of a game. It was your best game all year, and Brett's mentality was, okay, it's just Mike's time, right, and Mike is a senior, he was hurt a little bit that year, and just that was the game that he took over. Right, I don't think anybody could have been more happy, because I look back at Mike, and quick story in the Thanksgiving Day game, right? Mike, I made a play on third down, and Mike comes running out, and he slapped my helmet, and he was the first one on the field to congratulate people. So even though he had a rough year with being injuries and whatnot, he was the first one to congratulate people, regardless of what was going on, right? So you see a lot of that right now with this team, and it's all hands on deck as team is first. Right, so it was a pretty neat experience, and it was great. I think no one was happier than the rest of the team for Mike to have that kind of game, in his last game, and for the team to go 14-0.
I'm clearly uncomfortable with this, Bob, so I'm going to redirect this quickly and say 2 things. One, guys like Bongard, Boron, Brendan Coyle, Middlemiss, John Price, we had some monsters out there on defense, which made our job easy. And the second thing I'll say is, I would have to try out to be the water boy on this team. So let's be very clear. There are levels to this, and that is a different level than I think what we were doing back then.
Well, let's talk about that, right? Because you mentioned off air that there were a lot of dual sport athletes, and there are on this team as well, but not as many Notre Dame, Missouri, Virginia Tech type commits back in 1996. What do you attribute that to, and what is it about this group? I'm not asking which team is better, by the way. I would never be so bold, but break down some of those differences, Mike. I see that reaction there.
My line is simple, and my teammates will get mad at me for saying this. I don't think we would compete with this team in a football game. I think it's pretty clear that this is a more talented team. In a street fight, it's a different story. We were built differently back then, and
Italian gentleman, Mike.
Yeah.
Come on now.
But the idea of multi-sport athletes, we had some guys, that were big time Division I players in other sports. Eddie was a big baseball player. Boron went and played lacrosse in college. Mike Marcel was an All-American in college at Maryland. We had some really, really great athletes, not necessarily Division I football players, but it kind of all came together at the right point with the right coaching staff, with the right leadership, and with the right intangibles. our team was special in a sense that we had an edge and an attitude. When we stepped on the field, it was we beat a lot of teams before we ever stepped on the field because of our mentality.
Yeah, I'll further that. And, I said this. I didn't play sophomore year, right? And I came back junior year, and just the aura of that team, I've never had it since, never had it before, was we're the team, right? We don't care what happened last year. Yes, we won a Catholic League last year, but we are the team, and regardless of what anybody else does, we determine our own fate. And it was unbelievable looking back, being on a team like that. And just to further it, and I think this team has an opportunity to do it tonight, when you win a championship like that, you build bonds that last forever, right? Mike talked about the text strings and, different text strings, with different groups. But, there's that 96 football team, and there's one of our senior class, that Brett's a part of. And, we just go back and forth. And to go back to your question, Bob, the running joke is it'd probably be a running clock by halftime if 96 played this team, just with the level of talent on this team and just the speed and physicality and, and how much the games change where people are concentrating, for the most part, on one sport. Now you have a Joey O'Brien and Grayson, who are basketball players and unbelievable athletes, right? I mean, Grayson probably came to LaSalle more well-known for basketball, and now look what he's become, and that's a tribute to him. And, Brett, I know, changed him from defensive end, offensive tackle. And
good move.
What a great move that is, right?
Number 9 player in the country.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
I think Notre Dame's getting two of the best between GPA and just their skills on the field and the kind of people they are, right? Freeman's got to be really happy about those two young men coming to Notre Dame next year, and I'm sure they'll be able to contribute pretty quickly there. But definitely a different game, and the level's cranked up.
We're talking to Ed Bongard from LaSalle, class of 1998, Mike Durso from the class of 1997. Guys, you won at one point 32 straight football games. Not something that's been done since in the history of LaSalle football, or before, for that matter. So, yes, regardless of what this team does here today, you're hoping that they join the Brotherhood of Champions like you guys are. But tell me more about that run and how it feels to have a 32-game win streak at your back for the rest of your days.
Yeah, it started the 95 season, which was my junior year, Brett's sophomore year, that Ed was just talking about. We actually lost our first 2 games of the season and then rattled off, I think it was 11 in a row to win the Catholic League. And you saw – I was saying earlier, Rob, you see it with this team. You saw with that team as things started to go, we started to really believe in ourselves, and things started to come together from an offensive perspective under Coach Gordon and the leadership of Brett, and everything just kind of came together as we started to knock teams off. I think you saw that with this team a little bit too. They got through that tough Roman loss, and then you look at the stats after that game. I think I read something that Gavin has like 33 touchdowns and 0 interceptions since that game, something crazy like that. So I think this team built the same way that our team did. We got through that first year, rattled off 14 in a row, and then Ed's senior year took another 8 to get it to 32. So it was a pretty impressive run. Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, you talk about it. It was a lot of fun, right? While it was happening, and I said in the message today, Brian Kersey, who was a member of our 96 team or the 95 team, he was at the send-off. Right, it was really cool, and my response was, I hope these kids are living in a moment, right? Because this is something so cool that when we look back, there's a lot of emotion that I get because you kind of reminisce, and at the moment, we'll do it again senior year, right? But junior year was so special looking back now, right? You just hope these juniors are living in a moment, right? The seniors, obviously, this is their last run, and obviously they know what they're playing for, right? This is their last game, one way or the other, for playing, for the blue and gold. And it'll be a special game for them. But you hope the juniors and sophomores and even some of the freshmen, right, that Brett brought up, are really just enjoying this experience because it is something that, will last with them the rest of their lives.
Heck of a point there from Ed Bongard, our guest here, class of 1998. Mike Durso with us here as well. We'll let you guys go in a minute here, but what are your thoughts on this contest? We've seen Central Catholic earlier in the year. You guys have been at just about every game down on the sidelines. So what do you see in this contest, and what's the key?
Yeah, I was in Pittsburgh I think it was week 0. I think it was 23-6, and I think both teams are different. I think you've seen some development on both teams. Listen, I don't think that our defense will give up 30 points, and I don't see a way in which our offense doesn't score 30 points. That's kind of the simplest way I can look at it. I don't know that you're stopping this offense at this point in the way they're rolling. And remember, you didn't have Jimmy Mahoney wasn't playing a lot of offense that time. Joey was hurt the whole second half, didn't play a whole lot. JP wasn't playing defense. You've got a whole different structure on this team tonight. And I know they've got some other players. I think they're number one. Their running back's kind of taking a bigger role in the offense, and he can play. I think this is a 2 or 3 touchdown game. I really do. I think we pull away in the second half and hoist the state trophy.
Well, it's a great call. Brett said it this week on Chalk Talk with you, is that the players took ownership. Right? When players take ownership of a team, something special typically happens. So I think it is going to be a close game. I was thinking 10-point game, maybe that 27-17, Mike likes 30, maybe 30-20. I think Pittsburgh Central, as big as their offensive line is, probably does put the ball in the end zone, but have to love LaSalle in this game just with everything that's going their way right now and the way Brett has them playing.
Well, I'll tell you what I love. I love you guys coming up here, taking some time with us, helping to preview the contest and telling us some war stories as well. Mike Durso from the class of 97, Ed Bongard from the class of 98. 2 champs with us in the booth previewing the 6A championship. Thanks, guys.
Bob, thank you. You do a tremendous job all year. There's alumni all over the country, and we're communicating with them, and you enable them to watch all these games, so we appreciate everything you do. It's awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Job,
Enjoy
Bob.
the contest, guys.
Thanks,
Special night here.
Yes, thank you.
Take care, and we'll be right back on the other side. This is Bob Long Sports.